Hello, I'm James Cornelius. I am here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois for the final Artifact of the Month talk of our 12-month discussion of some of the highlights from the Louise Taper collection acquired here at the Presidential Museum. We're hoping that you will help support this permanent home campaign to keep these items here. We end really where Mr. Lincoln began as a politician on a national scale. We end with a very rare document advertising a slave sale in Kentucky in 1859. And not just anywhere in Kentucky, but in Hardin County, Kentucky, where Abraham Lincoln was born. This sale was being conducted on New Year's Eve of 1859, December 31st, 152 years ago now. And it was 50 years after Mr. Lincoln had been born there, a few miles from the location of this slave sale. This was the underlying problem of life in Kentucky and of life in the United States, that in this case, three, as they are referred to here, likely Negroes, that's a combination of healthy, likable, and in the case of the two women, Lucy and Anne, possibly candidates for prostitution. Peter, the boy mentioned finally there, is described as being under 10 years of age. Here in the slave auction room, the scene of the Presidential Museum, we have a setting that depicts such a boy who is being separated violently from his parents, who are being sold away. We don't know what happened to Lucy or Anne or Peter in this case. Their last names are not given. We don't know if Lucy and Anne were sisters or perhaps a mother and daughter. Perhaps one of them was the mother of Peter. Perhaps they were all siblings. We don't know. We do know that they were being sold because their previous owner, man by the name of John Coe, had apparently defaulted on some debts, and the county court in Hardin County had ruled that he needed to pay off his debts, and all he had to pay was his valuable property, 3 of his slaves. The person who was living in John Coe's residence, which he had also lost, Robert Van Meter, would have been living near these 3 people, although he was not the owner of these 3 people. This was an estate that was being broken up piece by piece, just as the lives of the slaves themselves were being further broken by sale. Whether they ended up in Louisville or St. Louis or Memphis or New Orleans or Texas, we don't know. The general pattern was that slaves were sold farther west and farther south as the country grew in that direction. Or they might have just been sold to a neighboring plantation. The man conducting this sale, the commissioner as he is called, as it is an action of the county commissioners on behalf of the county court, the man commissioned to do this was Samuel Haycraft, who has correspondence with Abraham Lincoln. Samuel Haycraft was an acquaintance of Lincoln's father, Thomas. They were roughly the same age. Haycraft was a well-known man in Hardin County. He was elected to the state senate, and here he was selling off some slaves. He was a loyal Union man. He did not favor the secession of the slave states about a year after this event took place, and yet he was pro-slavery. This is the kind of person that Abraham Lincoln had to take notice of. He is someone that his own family had known. He was a loyal Union man in a state that was committed to slavery. Haycraft invited Lincoln to come visit his old haunting grounds in Kentucky, in Hardin County, after Lincoln had been nominated for the presidency. And Lincoln wrote, "Do you think I would be safe And the answer is probably not. Lincoln did not go there. This document shows how personally, how closely Abraham Lincoln and all who had known him in his earliest days were tied up in the torment of slavery in this country. It was personal, it was local. It is even conceivable that Lincoln had known the ancestors of the 3 slaves here being sold, Lucy, Anne, and Peter. He certainly knew others who had been sold in previous days. The Presidential Library is extremely proud to own the 3 great documents of Lincoln's presidency. We, along with the Library of Congress, are the only places in the country that have a copy of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, of his Emancipation Proclamation signed by Lincoln, and a copy of the 13th Amendment signed by all the congressmen who supported it, including President Lincoln, that freed slavery. But that wonderful vista of those 3 great historic documents is barricaded at this point by this ugly document underpinning the whole system, selling people for profit, for money, through the courts, for personal interest, for personal gain. That's what Lincoln rose to end, and he did end it, and he gave his life for it, just as many of these people gave their lives within that system. So please help us keep this document here as part of the Taper collection so that it can be displayed along with Lincoln's own 3 great political documents. And we visit with you in future films, we hope, and we hope you will visit us to see these great historic items. Thank you.